Nicole's voice screamed in the background. Brandon, what's happening? Tell me what's going on. Brandon sounded scared. I had never heard my older brother sound scared before. Emily, he said quickly. Please. We need to talk. I took a slow sip of my tea. About what? I asked calmly. About the bank. About the loans. About everything. There isn't much to talk about. Emily, come on. We're family. I looked at the message he had sent me earlier that night. The one where he said I owed him respect. Then I thought about Ethan standing in the backyard, hungry and embarrassed. Family? I asked. Was that what we were when you refused to give my son a burger? Brandon was silent. It was just a joke, he finally said. No, Brandon. It wasn't. You know I didn't mean it. Ethan cried because of what you said. The line went quiet. For a moment, all I could hear was his breathing. Then he spoke again. What do you want me to do? I looked around my small apartment. The walls were plain. The furniture was simple. Nothing about the place looked expensive. But I loved it. It was peaceful. I don't want anything from you, I said. Then why are you doing this? I'm not doing anything. Your payment is late. The bank is following its rules. But you own the bank. Yes. You could change the rules. I could. Then do it. I shook my head. The rules are the same for everyone. Brandon groaned. This is crazy. No, I said softly. What's crazy is that you've known me your whole life and never bothered to learn what I actually do. The call ended a few minutes later. I finished my tea and went to bed. The next morning, my phone started ringing before breakfast. The first call was from Mom. The second was from Dad. Then Aunt Susan called. After that, Uncle James. Apparently, Brandon had spent the entire night telling everyone what happened. I answered Dad's call first. Emily, he said carefully. Your mother and I need to ask you something. What is it? Do you really own that bank? Part of it, yes. Dad was quiet. Then he asked, why didn't you tell us? I smiled sadly. Would anybody have listened? He didn't answer. Because he knew I was right. For years, every family gathering had been the same. People talked about Brandon's businesses. They talked about Nicole's social media posts. They talked about expensive vacations and new cars. Nobody asked about my work. Nobody asked why I traveled so often. Nobody asked why company leaders called me at midnight. Nobody cared enough to find out. They had already decided that I was the unsuccessful one. Dad sighed. I think we made some mistakes. Maybe. We thought you were struggling. You never asked. After the call ended, I made pancakes for Ethan. He sat at the kitchen table drawing dinosaurs. Mom. Yes. Are we rich? I almost laughed. Why do you ask? Because Uncle Brandon seemed really surprised. I sat beside him. Honey, being rich isn't the most important thing. Then what is? I thought for a moment. Being kind. Ethan nodded. I think that's more important too. A few hours later, someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, I saw Brandon and Nicole standing there. Neither of them looked happy. Nicole wasn't holding her phone. That alone told me something was different. Brandon looked tired. Very tired. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were red. Like he hadn't slept all night. Can we come in? He asked. I stepped aside. They walked in and sat down on the couch. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Nicole looked around. It's a nice apartment. I almost smiled. Last year she had called it small. Now it was nice. Funny how quickly opinions changed. Brandon stared at the floor. Finally he spoke. I owe you an apology. I waited. I was wrong about you. I stayed quiet. I thought your business failed. It didn't. I know that now. He looked embarrassed. Maybe for the first time in his life. I shouldn't have treated you the way I did. No, you shouldn't have. And what I said to Ethan was terrible. Yes. Brandon rubbed his face. I don't know why I acted like that. I did know. But I wanted him to say it himself. After a long pause, he finally did. Because I thought I was better than everyone. The room became quiet. Nicole looked down. She knew it was true too. Brandon continued. I thought having more money made me more important. I nodded. A lot of people think that. I was one of them. Just then, Ethan walked into the room wearing dinosaur pajamas. He stopped when he saw Brandon. The room became very quiet. Brandon stood up. Then he slowly knelt down until he was at Ethan's eye level. Hi, buddy. Ethan didn't answer right away. Hi. Brandon swallowed. I need to tell you something. What? I'm sorry. Ethan blinked. For what? For hurting your feelings yesterday. Ethan thought about it. You made me sad. I know. Why? The question seemed simple. But Brandon struggled to answer it. Finally he said, because I forgot how to be nice. Ethan looked at him. Then he smiled a little. My teacher says everybody makes mistakes. Brandon nodded. Your teacher is very smart. My mom says that too. For the first time, Brandon smiled. A real smile. Not the proud smile he usually wore. A humble one. I'm going to try to do better. Ethan thought about that. Then he held out his hand. Brandon shook it. The adults in the room laughed softly. And just like that, the tension became a little lighter. Over the next few days, things changed. Mom called almost every evening. Not to ask about money. Not to ask about the bank. But to ask about me. How I was doing. How Ethan was doing. What projects I was working on. For the first time in years, she seemed interested. Dad started asking questions too. Real questions. Questions he should have asked long ago. Even Aunt Susan called. She sounded uncomfortable. Emily, I may have judged you unfairly. Maybe a little. She laughed nervously. More than a little. Uncle James called next. I guess I was wrong. You guess. Okay, I was very wrong. That made me laugh. A week later, the family investment meeting arrived. Every year, Brandon hosted it. Every year, everyone listened to him talk about business. This year felt different. When Ethan and I arrived, people greeted us immediately. Not because of the bank. At least I hope not. But because they finally saw us. Really saw us. Dad gave me a hug. Mom hugged Ethan. Nicole offered us drinks. Even Aunt Susan smiled warmly. When everyone sat down, Brandon stood up. The room became quiet. He cleared his throat. I want to say something before we begin. Everyone looked at him. He took a deep breath. For years, I thought success looked only one way. Nobody spoke. I thought the biggest house meant success. He paused. I thought the nicest car meant success. Another pause. I thought the person making the most noise in the room was the most important. Several people looked uncomfortable. Brandon looked at me. I was wrong. The room stayed silent. Then he continued. Emily worked hard. His voice grew stronger. While I was showing off, she was building something amazing. I could feel everyone listening. While I was judging her, she was helping companies around the world. He smiled sadly. And while I was busy talking about success, she was actually achieving it. Mom wiped away tears. Dad looked proud. For the first time in many years, nobody interrupted. Nobody made jokes. Nobody laughed. They simply listened. After the meeting ended, everyone went outside. The sun was shining. The grill was hot. The backyard looked exactly the same as it had the week before. But somehow everything felt different. Brandon stood beside the grill again. Only this time there was no showing off. No bragging. No mean jokes. Just cooking. Ethan walked over carefully. Brandon smiled. Hey, buddy. Hi. Brandon picked up the biggest burger on the grill. Then he added extra pickles. Special order. Ethan's eyes lit up. My favorite. Brandon handed him the plate. There you go. Ethan took a huge bite. Everyone laughed. Real laughter. Happy laughter. Not the kind that hurts people's feelings. As I watched my son eat, I thought about everything that had happened. The bank. The phone calls. The apologies. The lessons. Then I realized something important. Success isn't about owning a bank. It isn't about owning businesses. It isn't about fancy cars or giant houses. Those things can disappear. Real success is different. Real success is treating people with kindness. It's helping others. It's respecting people even when you think they have less than you. It's listening before judging. It's making people feel welcome instead of making them feel small. That afternoon, Ethan ran around the yard with his cousins. His laughter filled the air. Mom smiled. Dad smiled. Even Brandon smiled. And for the first time in a very long time, our family felt like a real family again. Not because of money. Not because of success. But because everyone finally remembered something important. Being kind will always matter more than being rich. Tell her about the social media post. Someone shouted on the phone. Tell her it will ruin her reputation. I stayed calm. I picked up my cup and took a small sip of tea before speaking. Brandon, I said, you have not paid back $340,000 in business loans. Right now, you are behind on your payments. There was silence for a moment. I continued, your stores owe a lot of money. If I decide to follow the normal bank rules, you could lose everything in about 6 weeks. Instead of talking about social media, you should spend your time making your payment. You wouldn't do that, Brandon said quickly. We're family. I took another sip of tea. Family? I asked. Is that what you were thinking when you spoke to Ethan today? Is that what you were thinking when you told a 7-year-old boy that burgers were only for kids who have a future? The line became very quiet. Is that what you were thinking when you embarrassed my son in front of everyone at the family barbecue? I asked. Nobody answered. Finally, I spoke again. Here is what is going to happen. You have 72 hours to make your payment and pay the late fees. The total amount is $12,800. Brandon sounded shocked. I don't have that kind of money right now, he said. Everything I have is tied up in inventory. Then you should have paid on time, I replied. Please, Brandon said. For the first time in my life, I heard fear in his voice. Can't you give me more time? We're family. The same family that laughed at my son? I asked. The same family that spent years reminding me that you guaranteed a loan for me? Nobody spoke. Then I added, and let's remember something else. I paid that loan back 4 years ago. But you enjoyed using it to make yourself look important. Dad's voice suddenly came through the phone. Brandon must have put the call on speaker. Sweetheart, Dad said gently. Please be reasonable. Brandon made a mistake today. He'll apologize. Will he? I asked. Because you stood there and watched everything happen. You watched your grandson get humiliated. You didn't say a single word. Dad did not answer. Then Mom spoke. She sounded upset and close to tears. We didn't know Ethan would take it so seriously. I shook my head. He's 7 years old, Mom. Of course he took it seriously. Mom began crying softly. You're being vindictive, she said. No, I answered. I'm a banker. Everyone became quiet again. If Brandon were any other customer, he would already be facing serious consequences for missing payments. Giving him 72 hours is already special treatment. What do you want from me? Brandon asked. Before I could answer, he quickly said, Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I said that to Ethan. Happy now? His apology sounded empty. I don't want anything from you, I replied. I want you to pay your loan the way the contract says. Whether you truly apologize to Ethan is up to you. In the background, I could hear Nicole crying. Dad was trying to calm everyone down. Mom kept asking how the family had reached this point. Then Uncle James joined the conversation. This is extortion, he shouted. I know lawyers. Wonderful, I said calmly. Ask them to read the loan documents. They'll tell you that everything I'm doing follows the rules. Then I added something important. In fact, Brandon has received special treatment for over a year. I personally made sure the bank gave him extra patience. That special treatment ends today. Nobody had anything to say after that. I ended the call. Then I blocked everyone's numbers for the evening. I was tired. I needed sleep. The next morning, I woke up feeling much better. When I checked my phone, I stared at the screen in surprise. 73 missed calls. 42 text messages. I ignored every single one. Instead, I went to the kitchen and made breakfast for Ethan. Pancakes. His favorite. When he sat down at the table, he looked at me carefully. Are you okay, Mom? He asked. I smiled. I'm perfect, honey. He seemed relieved. Good. I placed a stack of pancakes in front of him. Now eat before they get cold. At exactly 9 o'clock, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I answered. A professional voice spoke. Good morning. My name is Jonathan Park. I am Brandon Thompson's attorney. I wasn't surprised. We need to discuss these loan acceleration threats, he said. There are no threats, I replied calmly. There is simply a signed contract. Your client has missed payments and is in default. There was a short pause. My client says you're his sister. That's correct. Then this is a conflict of interest. I almost laughed. No, it isn't. I continued. I'm the owner of the bank. Brandon is a borrower. If anything, he has benefited from being my brother. The lawyer was quiet. Then I said, Brandon has 68 hours remaining to fix the default. Without waiting for another argument, I ended the call. At 10 o'clock, another phone call came in. This time it was the bank's senior loan officer. Miss Thompson, he said. We've received several calls from Mr. Thompson's attorney. How would you like us to proceed? Follow the normal procedures, I answered. No special exceptions. Understood. Then he added something unexpected. We received a wire transfer from Brandon this morning. I smiled. How much? $12,800. What time? 9:45. I leaned back in my chair. So he found the money. Looks that way. Please confirm receipt and update his account. Of course. Then I added, from now on, Brandon receives the exact same treatment as every other customer. Understood. Before ending the call, he asked, will you be attending the board meeting this afternoon? Yes, I replied. I still need to review the quarterly reports. After the call ended, I sat quietly. Brandon had found the money. Maybe Dad helped him. Maybe he borrowed it. Maybe he sold something valuable. I didn't know. And honestly, I didn't care. What mattered was that he paid. A few minutes later, another text message appeared on my phone. It came from a new number. The message read, Your mother is very upset. This isn't who you are. I looked at the screen for a moment. Then I typed my response. This is exactly who I am. You just never cared enough to know me. A few days later, a certified letter arrived in the mail. It was from Brandon. Inside was a written apology addressed to Ethan. The words were polite and carefully chosen. It sounded like a lawyer had helped write every sentence. Still, it was something. Not much, but something. 2 weeks later, the family gathered for Mom's birthday dinner. The atmosphere felt different from the moment I arrived. Nobody was loud. Nobody was making jokes. Nobody was criticizing anyone. Brandon and Nicole arrived late. They stayed for a short time and left early. Nobody asked rude questions about my apartment. Nobody made comments about my career. Nobody made fun of Ethan. For once, everyone behaved. Then something happened that made me smile. Ethan walked over to Brandon. Can I have a piece of cake? He asked. Brandon immediately stood up. Of course. Then he cut Ethan a huge slice. A bigger slice than anyone else's. Ethan smiled. Brandon smiled back. It was a small moment. But small moments matter. That night after we got home, I tucked Ethan into bed. He looked sleepy. Uncle Brandon was nicer today, he said. Yes, I agreed. He was. Ethan yawned. Did you talk to him? I smiled. In a way. Ethan thought about that. Then he said, I like it better when people are nice. I kissed his forehead. Me too, sweetheart. A few hours later, I sat alone in my home office reviewing bank reports. The bank was doing very well. Profits were higher than expected. The acquisition I had completed years earlier was proving to be one of the smartest decisions of my career. Not because it gave me power over Brandon, because it helped create security for Ethan's future. The same future everyone had laughed about at the barbecue. While they spent years judging me, I had spent those years working. Building, planning, saving, investing, creating opportunities, one careful decision at a time. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from my cousin Ryan. He had seen everything at the barbecue. His message was short. I heard what happened. Good for you. Brandon needed to learn that lesson. Then he added, my company is planning an acquisition. We need a financial consultant. Interested? I smiled. Then I replied, send me the details. I'd be happy to review them. As I pressed send, I realized something important. The next family gathering might still be uncomfortable. People might still whisper. Some might even fear me. But that was fine. For 5 years they had underestimated me. Now they knew better. The most important thing was that Ethan would never again be told he didn't have a future. Because while everyone else was busy judging, I had been building that future all along. One investment at a time. One smart decision at a time. One opportunity at a time. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is actually the strongest person there. They simply don't feel the need to prove it. Not until absolutely necessary.
अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं ये जो दिन सहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा बेसर्द लगता है दिल का हर एक कोना अब बहुत ही दूर भरता है अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं ये जो दिन सुहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा सर्द लगता है दिल का हर खोने की राहों में बस रह गया दर्द का असर